Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're going to be a creeped out person after watching this video. He asked for me by name? Yes. Call 911. I've never seen him in my life. I was watching my daughter's kids while she and her husband go out of town. They have a teenage daughter. Let's say her name is Alyssa. At like 3 AM, I'm woken up by a weird rustling sound and look out the window and see movement. I saw a boy emerge from the bushes on the side of the house. I saw a bike tossed on the lawn that definitely wasn't ours. My first thought was it was a burglar casing houses, but since he looked young and came through on a bike, I figured scaring him straight would be enough for him to decide to head home. I didn't want to ruin a teenager's life by calling the cops straight away. So I went out on the porch, flipped the lights on, and said, "Can I help you?" in my classroom voice. The guy looked surprised, but not nervous. He was wearing a Letterman style jacket, but once I got a clear view of him in the streetlights, he seemed much older than my granddaughter, gruff and more wiry than athletic. He walked up closer to the house and said, "Yeah, I'm looking for Alyssa." I gave him a disapproving glare, hoping he'd realize he came looking for a girl late at night, and a grumpy old person answered, "It's time to split." I'm thinking what must have happened is Alyssa knew her parents were going out of town, and maybe before she knew I'd be staying over, told a secret older boyfriend to come over. It was late, and I was alone with several kids, so I didn't want him coming any closer to the house. I also thought it was weird he came so late and wanted to be sure Alyssa actually wanted to talk to him, so I said, "I'm sorry, who?" And he said, "Alyssa. You know, Alyssa last name, this is her house." I thought, he knew her full name, they must be at least friends. I said, "You wait there." He started to walk up and I felt a sick burning in my gut. Instinct kicked in. I yelled, "No, stop, freeze." Then readjusted and said, "You stay right there. This is private property. Don't take a step closer. Wait there." So I go in and Alyssa is asleep, just one room over from where the rustling first occurred, and I wake her up and say something to the effect of, "I don't know what the big idea was to have friends over this time of night, but you tell them to go home." And she has no clue what I'm talking about. I say, "There's a guy outside asking for you." Confused, she gets up and goes to the window. She sees him and goes white as a sheet. He asks for me? Yeah. By name? Yes. Call the police. I've never seen him in my life. I call 911 immediately, but as I was on the phone with them, Alyssa started tugging at my arm. "He's coming up." I had younger kids in the house to think about, so I kept the door latched and pulled it open just enough for the latch and yelled, "I asked my husband and none of us know an Alyssa last name. Leave my property or I'm calling 911. He got angry and started yelling for her to come out. Thankfully, the police came pretty quickly, and when he heard the sirens, he grabbed the bike and ran off. I watched where he was running, and he jumped into the passenger side of a car without headlights or front plates and sped off. The police followed in the same direction once I pointed them, but they didn't get him. They advised us to take all her social media details offline if she was sure she didn't know this person, and said they'd had a couple of similar reports recently and were looking into it. I got a heavy-duty lock and she slept in my room for the remainder of my visit. Jeez, that is so scary. I wonder who that guy was. I am really protective of my personal details like my phone number and address and things like that, and I think that it's absolutely crazy that people just put those details on websites like Facebook where any weirdo can see them. How I was followed by a strange man that talked to my parents. All I can say is that this scared me so much I started crying as soon as our front door closed behind me. To the story. A year ago, my father and I moved to a big city from a village-like town. Before that, I never had to actually interact with others. In my town, everyone somehow knew each other, or at least each other's family. In this new city, I don't even know everyone who lives in our apartment building. One afternoon around 2 PM, I was on my way home from school. It was a 6-minute walk from the tram station, so I decided to go and buy some lunch at the store right next to the station. While I was in the store, it started raining outside. At first just a little, but in less than 2 minutes, the little droplets of water turned into a big, heavy, never-ending flow of water. I was pretty annoyed, because my jacket didn't have a hood or anything to cover up my head and stop my hair from getting wet and curly, when I walked past a line of cars that were waiting for a traffic light to turn green. The cars were facing the opposite direction of where I was going. Heck, they were even standing on the other side of the road. But when I passed this one car, a guy waved at me and rolled down his window to shout something. I couldn't hear what he was saying, so I just smiled and kept walking. Around 100 meters further down the road, I heard a car approach me. When I turned around, I saw that the guy made a U-turn and followed me down the road. He stopped next to me and leaned over to open the door at my side. I figured he wanted to ask for directions. I was the only person around due to the weather, but I couldn't have been more wrong. He started talking again in a heavy accent. I couldn't understand what he was saying, so I asked if he could repeat himself. He looked annoyed and said, "I know your parents. They said it would be okay if I drove you home." But slower and clearer this time so I could understand him. This creeped me out because A, I don't have a mum, so the only parent he could have talked to would have been my father, who would never support someone driving me a few hundred meters, and B, my father doesn't know when I get home from school. Especially not that day, because I was giving a girl English lessons after school and he didn't bother to ask how long that would take. I told the man I didn't need a ride and continued walking. The man started his car and drove slowly beside me, stopping whenever he had the chance to park next to me, telling me to get in because he had to drive me home. I just kept walking because this was starting to make me really uncomfortable and the rain hadn't stopped. After maybe 2 minutes of him following me like this, he actually drove on the sidewalk and blocked parts of my way. He opened the door again and I just snapped and told him I would call the police if he didn't stop following me. He gave me a look that I can't forget, a look of anger and disappointment, but also fear. I kept walking and took a wrong turn just to be sure he wouldn't keep following me. He kept driving slowly until he reached a corner where he wouldn't have been able to follow me because there was a small pedestrian zone with shops. He turned around and drove back in the direction where he came from, and I just ran home. As soon as I closed the front door behind me and stepped in the elevator, I started to shake and cry. I was completely wet from the rain and was scared for at least another hour because I was alone at home and I didn't know if maybe he saw how I opened our door if he'd come here. Child abduction is just so scary because it can just happen so quickly. A child gets into a stranger's car and just poof, they disappear. I'm glad OP had the sense to be suspicious and know that her father would have never allowed it. I've heard kids now have secret codes and passwords for stuff like this. Like, if a stranger talks to them and say they know their parents, then the child asks, well, what's the password? To know if they can trust them. I think that's a pretty cool idea. I hate working at a library. I'm a student assistant at my uni's library, meaning I do the actual librarian's job while they scroll Facebook. It's not uncommon for my supervisors to go into the back room when it's particularly busy and just leave me and another student to handle the sudden onslaught of 30 students. The thing about this library is that it's fully open to those who aren't affiliated with the university. I don't know why, because the town itself has 2 libraries, both a very decent size, but whatever. What I'm trying to say is that it's not uncommon to go up to the top floor and see a 50-year-old man with a huge beer gut trying to chat up college-aged girls. The encounter that I'm telling you about happened during a walkthrough. At the end of the night, the supervisor sent the students up to all the floors to tell the stragglers that they have to go home because we're closing soon. A lot of the assistants hate this shift because it can be pretty creepy at times. Usually 2 assistants get sent up to do the walkthrough, but this time it was only me. This night my boss, an elderly woman, was the acting supervisor and she wanted this done by the book. That meant a detailed report of each floor over the walkie-talkie. Except all of our walkie-talkies have dead batteries because none of the supervisors ever buy new ones. So I'm walking around upstairs with a dead walkie-talkie, making sure everybody knows that we're closing soon, when I see a middle-aged man just sitting at a table, staring at his hands. I tell him that we're closing soon and he nods at me. I can smell weed on him, which wasn't uncommon. A lot of people from the town like to get high in the library. I think nothing of it and continue with my walkthrough when I suddenly realise that I can hear somebody walking behind me, like half sprinting to catch up with me. I keep walking, getting faster because I'm getting uncomfortable and the footsteps behind me get faster too. I'm a naturally paranoid person and immediately assumed he was going to attack me. I decided to take the staircase down instead of the elevator and just start going down when he catches up to me. I just kept moving, but I could feel him practically hovering behind me. Suddenly, he blew some air at my exposed neck and laughed. I didn't look back, just kept moving. I decided to just not finish my walkthrough and continue downstairs until I was at the first floor again. The entire time he was following me and would sometimes blow air at me or briefly try to make small talk. I could smell beer on his breath. He was so close to me that I was scared he was going to push me down the stairs. When I finally got to the first floor, he just walked away to the entrance and I ran to the back room. I filed a report with my boss. He's been back since, but I've just been told to grin and bear it. To the wasted guy who made me fear for my own safety, let's not meet. Okay, what the hell? That is super not okay. No one deserves to feel unsafe in their workplace, and they probably had the 2-person walkthrough rule for that very reason. If this guy was drunk and high, what reason would they have for not banning him from the library? He was found sitting at a desk staring at his hands, for God's sake. Whoever told OP to grin and bear it should be sent on the closing walkthroughs alone from then on. Okay, so that's all for r/LetsNotMeet. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!